everyone, welcome back to the Support the Spectrum channel. Today we're going to be talking about Gestalt language processing. So buckle up, this is going to be a long one. I made a video on Gestalt language processing in short form on TikTok, and it is the most shared, most viewed video I've ever gotten besides one other one. And it was the first video of mine to really blow up and give me attention, and there's a reason for this. Although Gestalt language processing has been researched for over 30 years, it is a relatively new term, new buzzword, and it's finally just starting to be disseminated into the speech and language community, as well as the autism support community, as well as generally the neurodivergent advocacy and support world. So it's really important to know about it. And let's just get right into it. In the 1980s, Barry Prezant, Lillian Stiegler, and Ann Peters were studying a population of autistic individuals and finding the patterns in their language. They then published an article called Language Acquisition and Communicative Behavior in Autism, toward an understanding of the whole of it. That is a funny little play on words when we start to learn what Gestalt language processing is. So, research started in the 80s. Within Barry's research group, he had a student named Marge Blanc. And Marge Blanc took that research, that knowledge, and ran with it. And in 2005, she developed the natural language acquisition for Gestalt language processors, and then later published a book in 2012 all about it. So although this buzzword, Gestalt language processing, is just starting to reach the masses of autism support leaders, educators, caregivers, it has been studied for almost 50 years now, from the 1980s. Yeah, 45 years or so. So just know that this is not new. This is not new information. This has been largely studied. It is now peer reviewed. And we know as educators that this is how most of the autistic population learns language. I've had the absolute privilege of speaking to Marge Blanc several times, taking a few of her courses. So I feel that the information I'm going to share today would be approved. You know, everything is from what I've learned from her, as well as the experience that I've had. That being said, the presentation I usually give about Gestalt language processing to schools or young speech language pathologists is 3 hours long. There is so much to know about it. So today is going to be a Gestalt language processing 101. And let's get right into it. To start off, we have to talk about the 2 types of language learners that we know about. One is analytic language learners. This is a majority of the population. Analytic language learners are known as word babies. We have the desire to gather language one word at a time. So when you're younger and you're playing with a ball and your caregiver says, ball, you learn that individual word, ball, means this object. And then they say, yeah, it's a blue ball. And you learn the color blue. You take that information, that single unit of meaning, and you're able to then build it up into 2-word utterances, 3-word utterances. You know that blue is a descriptive word. You know that ball is a noun. I mean, not so cognizant of how it categorizes at that age, but your brain gathers that information like it's gathering Pokemon, gotta catch them all, and organizes it very cleanly into single units of meaning that you can build up to mean other things. Blue blanket in another instance. So you see language, you see words as one unit of meaning, and you don't gain the ability to use rich intonation until later in life, whereas Gestalt language processors see big chunks of language or animated emotion-based language as one unit of meaning, and their ability to see language as single units of meaning that you build upon comes later. So intonation comes first and understanding units of language comes later. So they're known as intonation babies. The best way to conceptualize this is to think that for Gestalt language processors, their episodic memory and emotions are their main forms of communication. So it's very easy to misunderstand Gestalt language processors because they will be communicating with their Gestalts, and it might have deeper meaning to them than it does to anyone else listening to them. For example, someone who loves Toy Story, is emotionally attached to Toy Story, watch the movie and sees Buzz Lightyear say, "to infinity and beyond," and then goes to fly, right? They might think that "to infinity and beyond" means flying. They see that whole chunk of language as one unit of meaning. "To infinity and beyond" means flying. So they might see an airplane and say, "to infinity and beyond." And you think that they are quoting, or maybe you don't understand what they're referring to, but in their minds, they're being clear as day. They're saying flying. The language also doesn't have to be these large chunks. It could be really animated little chunks of language. Like, "help me" could mean that I'm hurt or I'm in danger. Doesn't necessarily have to mean like, "oh, I'm just fixing this little thing, I need help." But if they use it in that really animated way, it could mean something deeper to them. Most Gestalt language processors also have a real affinity for music and melody. They love songs. They love listening to certain sounds. A telltale sign of a Gestalt language processor is playing a certain sound over and over and over again. And if you have a non-speaking Gestalt language processor, they may only use buttons on their AAC system that is really animated, that are really animated, or have certain sounds that they like to them. I was just working with a client yesterday who, this is my second time seeing them. I wasn't 100% positive they're the Gestalt language processor, but yesterday I saw them playing sounds over and over again, and the language that they were using on their AAC system was, "yeah, ha, this is great." So I wouldn't diagnose someone as Gestalt language processing at only 2 times seeing them, but I'm leaning towards it. Another really important thing to know as a neurodivergent educator or neurodivergent support educator is that 85% of autistic people are Gestalt language processors. And there is a chunk of the general population that are Gestalt language processors as well, but they seem to figure out their language journey naturally without needed interventions and get to the point of using grammar and seeing words as a single unit of meaning, mostly independently, given models and given the typical type of language acquisition. Whereas our autistic friends might need more help. They might get a little stuck in their episodic memories, a little stuck in their emotions, and only use their gestalts to communicate for a while. And so we have to help them with that. Tied to emotional experiences. This is huge, okay? The language that they are most attuned to, the language that they will use the most or use the most on their AAC systems will be emotion-based. And that doesn't always mean it's positive emotions. I had a client who absolutely was terrified of this little green alien monster looking thing on YouTube, but would seek it out, play the sound, and just start crying. And so I put that visual and the sound under the scared emotion in their AAC system. And you might think like, "oh no, don't trigger them. Don't put that in their AAC system." It was very clear that this person was figuring out the connection between that sound, which was a gestalt to them, feeling afraid. And it wasn't a trigger for them as much as it was figuring out that this is an emotion that you're going to feel throughout the rest of your life, and we're going to learn what that word really means. You already feel it, so let's put more meaning to it. So it's language in the learner's mind. This means that a gestalt is not just any intonation-rich phrase that you model to Gestalt language processors. Gestalts have to have deeper meaning to them. It's the language that's in their minds, not necessarily the language that you are modeling. And of course, they could be long or short. Some people's gestalts are whole songs long. Some people's gestalts are simply just a noise. And typically, gestalts are echolalia, whether they're immediate echolalia or delayed echolalia. A lot of gestalts are delayed echolalia. So that gestalt language processor heard a certain sound or phrase or song from media or a previous conversation, or maybe they even just see things in a book, something that a character does. They're going to take that delayed echolalia and use it later in a scenario that is fitting for that language to them. And this is also a good point, okay? Gestalts don't necessarily have to be verbal or be used on an AAC system. They can be motor actions. So we typically see this with non-speaking Gestalt language processors, but certainly speaking Gestalt language processors can also act out certain scenes that they've seen in movies or media, or they could want to act out certain characters that they read about in a book. And if they are acting out those scenes, whether they are verbally producing anything or maybe approximating certain words, they are acting out a gestalt, and it is meaningful. I saw a video once of a little person and they were acting out a scene where I think it was Minnie Mouse was ice skating. And so this little person was ice skating around, and at first the speech therapist and the mom weren't quite sure where or what that person was trying to communicate. Later, she went through the natural language acquisition stages and learned how to speak like an analytic speaker. And they found she was able to articulate like, yeah, this is what I was imitating, that I did this when I was feeling this way. And also, another really cool fun fact is these non-speaking people, they think they are speaking. This was so revolutionary to me when I first heard this. So they're speaking clear as day in their minds. Their inner minds, their inner voices are strong, clear. They know what they're saying, and they are saying it in their heads, which is called echolalia, and they think that other people can hear them. That's why there's frustration sometimes for these people when they're not understood, because they believe they're being clear as day. Okay, so let's get into the stages of natural language acquisition. Whew, I'm highly caffeinated today because I was anticipating that this would be a long video, so please forgive me. I feel like I'm going a mile a minute. Please leave any questions in the comments below or send me questions directly to my website, www.support-the-spectrum.com, under the Contact Us tab. The first thing you should know about the stages of natural language acquisition for Gestalt language processors is that it is not linear. The stages are not linear. You could have somebody who learned all their deep grammar, their more formal grammar, went through all the stages, and they might be having a day where they're feeling sick or a lot of pain, or maybe just like emotionally not feeling great. And they may go back to their stage 1 gestalts because that is easier for them to process, that's comforting for them. Also, those individuals who have never been validated as a Gestalt language processor might have to go back to stage 1 gestalts before moving forward. So I see so many of these clients. They are in their teens, they're in their 20s, and they've never been validated as a Gestalt language processor, meaning that throughout their course of life, language acquisition, speech therapy services, they've been treated as if they are an analytic language processor, learning one word at a time, core words, fringe words, all those things. And because they've never been validated for the type of language learner they are, and because Gestalt language processing is so emotion-based, we have to go back. We have to go back and validate those gestalts, let them store and process and understand them, and then move forward through the stages of natural language acquisition. So let me run through them real quick. Stage 1, processing and storing gestalts, scripting. Stage 2, mitigating gestalts, starting to mix different chunks of those gestalts together. Like, let's say they have a gestalt, let's go to the park. And that whole phrase just means let's go outside. Later, they might say, oh, let's say they have 2 gestalts, sorry. The one is, let's go to the park. The other one is, time to clean up. If they're in the mitigating phase, they might say, let's go clean up. Time to go outside, go to the park. So mix and match stage. Stage 3, isolating words, starting to put one single word and one single unit of meaning together. Stage 4, beginning grammar. And stage 5 and 6, further grammatical development. So like I said before, if somebody has never been validated as a Gestalt language processor, there's 2 things. 1, you gotta validate them. You gotta go back to stage 1 and not necessarily only modeling or speaking to them as if they are in stage 1, but just validating them if they do have Gestalts. So a perfect example of this is my one client, Abby Romeo. She is a Gestalt language processor that didn't know she was a Gestalt language processor until last year when I started working with her. Now, she describes her Gestalts as categories. She even has a lovely song about them. And that's very articulate. That's very observant and intuitive of her to know. This is how my mind works. I think in these categories, emotion-based categories, she puts the things that she likes together. She puts the things that she does not like together. So her positive emotions are all things she likes. Mermaids, cakes, adult women, and things she does not like are the negative emotions. Fear, anxiety are more things like spicy food, being really hot. She hates being hot. So she has figured out how to articulate her categories in a way that everybody can understand. When she is dysregulated, when she is feeling a lot of emotions, or when there's a buildup and a kind of a snap, a sensory trigger or something along those lines, she resorts back to her gestalts. She uses her gestalts to communicate. And so we talk about that a lot in therapy. We have a visual dictionary where we, with AI, create her, what she's picturing in her head, her different gestalts, and then we talk about the feeling words that we could say instead. But we are never invalidating her gestalts. She will say gestalt, I will say it right back to her, and then I'll say, is there another way we could say that? And she will go ahead and say her feeling words. So she's doing great. She's so independent. But the other thing I was going to say about learners who have only been taught language like an analytic language processor is that they may appear to be in stage 3. Now, they've only been taught language one word at a time, right? They've only ever been approached to teaching language with an analytic approach, one word at a time, core words, fringe words. So someone who's coming in, a new eye to them, might say, oh yeah, they're in stage 3, they're isolating words. But it's not necessarily true. They might be able to isolate words, but that might be because they've never been validated as a stage 1 Gestalt language processor. And what happens, unfortunately, is that just like with emotions, because again, Gestalts and emotions, they go hand in hand. Gestalts basically are emotions. They're always linked to emotional experiences. If you don't validate emotions, people just push them down and repress them, right? They hide them. They protect their emotions. They don't go outward with them. It's kind of a trauma response. And it's the same thing with Gestalts. If we don't honor Gestalts, if we don't validate Gestalts, if we don't try to connect with their Gestalts, they're going to hide them. So a lot of times I have started working with clients and they've only ever been given the analytic language approach to teaching language. So they are isolating words, but then I'm working with them for a little while and I start playing with noises and sounds and music and animated phrases with them and they light up. And I put them into the AAC device and they're just touching away at it. Someone who previously never really liked their AAC system starts using it because it finally represents their inner mind, their inner voice. It's a very wonderful experience. But those 2 things I think are really important to note. And we're already, whoa, this is already a long video, you guys. Oh my goodness, I told you it was going to be long. We didn't even get into teaching language in each stage. Again, if you would like me to teach your school, your professionals, your young students about Gestalt language processing, I am available to present on those things. Contact me on my website. Let's get into teaching language in stage 1 of Gestalt language processing. You want to focus on validating the language by repeating it back to them, or just saying like, I heard you. Again, we're validating because they're emotion-based. We're modeling intonation-rich phrases in a variety of communicative functions. So we're trying to give them all the tools to express themselves. We're going to be modeling phrases in greeting, parting, commenting, protesting, requesting, directing the actions of others, but all those other ones, yes, and more. You're also going to be doing detective work. What does this mean? It means when you have a Gestalt language processor who is scripting and you're not quite sure what that Gestalt, that script means, you're going to have to do detective work. You're going to have to consume the media they've consumed to try and understand what is the deeper meaning of this Gestalt. It's tough. It's tough sometimes to do. There is a website that helps you link, like if you type in what that person is saying, it helps you find the clip where it is from. And I know I have the website. It will be here or in the description. It just gotta gather that. The next important thing is that you're gonna model language as if you are the speaker. This is because pronouns are a more semantically rich thing to learn and don't come until later stages of language acquisition for Gestalt language processors. So for example, you wouldn't say, you like that. You would say, I like it. You would use the personal pronoun of the person that you're modeling language to, because the difference between you and I is a little bit semantically rich and comes later on in the language development. And you want to build trust in language by affirming their productions and validating them. And you want to avoid asking questions. This is so important. This is something that Marge Blanc really drives home for us in all of her trainings. You want to avoid asking questions until stage 4. Questions are extremely semantically rich. So, I mean, it depends on the person. There are many language learners, Gestalt language learners, who can answer like simple yes or no questions. But if you can avoid it, do that. If you need them to make a choice, giving them a visual choice of 2 is your best policy. So instead of saying like, oh, do you want a banana or an apple? You could hold up banana or apple and just have them make that choice. Teaching language in stage 2. So something I should have said before in stage 1 is that you do want to model these phrases that are easily mitigable so that when it comes to stage 2, it's a little bit easier to start mitigating. So there is an approach I take where if I'm using AAC with someone, even if I'm not using AAC with someone, I'm modeling a carrier phrase that serves a communicative function for most communicative functions. So let's go is a change in physical location. Time to is unpreferred but necessary tasks like cleaning up, putting clothes on, maybe taking a bath or shower. I need things like help, food, water, bathroom, a whole folder that's just yes, so that's positive. Comments, no is a folder that's all protesting and negations. I wanna play is all preferred. Play-based things, requesting preferred activities and activities of interest. There's also folders for that I label just phrases. So any Gestalt that you haven't found quite a place for yet, or maybe you're doing the detective work to find out what it means, you can place them in a folder that's just called phrases. Then modeling, changing up those carrier phrases a little bit to see if they're ready to start mitigating their Gestalts. And when you start to simplify their big phrases or big animated productions into more smaller productions, and they are receiving that, imitating that, doing it independently even, that shows that they are comprehending. And again, no questions. Teaching language in stage 3, when you're starting to isolate single words, is model single words and 2-word combinations. Use open-ended play and structured games. A really great game for this time in development is matching games. So that will show the individual meaning of all the words there because you have to match the single word with the single word. You want to avoid pushing for more complex language. You're still avoiding questions. And one of the most important things about this stage that Marge Blanc really highlights is that you want to stay in stage 3 as long as you can. This is because stage 3 is the critical time when you are starting to take those large chunks and break them down to individual units of meaning. So it's really important to do that as long as you can in stage 3 so that they can gather that individual units of meaning for as many words as they can. This looks like regression. A lot of caregivers come to me and they think that their child is regressing because they're producing less language than they used to. Remember, they were using these big gestalts, big phrases, sounds, everything. And now they're just separating that language into one single unit of meaning, and they're just using one word at a time. It looks like regression, but it is not. Stage 4 is finally when you can start introducing WH questions. You can start with narrative retelling questions. You can start modeling grammar, and you want to introduce how verbs connect other words to each other. So one goal that I have for one of my clients is working on those helping verbs, the is, was, understanding the present and past tense. And it really helps them start to put sentences together in a meaningful way. The language that you'll be modeling in stage 4 will not be most likely the most grammatically correct. For example, you might say things like, I'm going park, she eat cake, we have to clean up. Well, that one's right. Are you helping? You might start modeling some question words, but it might not always be the most grammatically accurate phrases, but you're kind of just modeling the language that you know that they have singularly. And then for stages 5 and 6, you are furthering the development of grammatical accuracy by following the developmental grammar guidelines, the DSS or DST, developmental sentence scoring or developmental sentence types. So that is a guideline, an outline of the grammatical steps that most language learners go through, and it's very helpful just to follow them because they're right there for you. And with that, you guys, I'm going to end the video there. It has been a long one. Thank you so much for sitting through all this information. Again, there is so much more to say about Gestalt language processing. If you ever would like to hire me to give those presentations, please contact me. If you have any additional questions, please contact me. I also hold consultations to individualize the care and the plan of whoever in your life is starting their language acquisition journey or is needing help in their language acquisition journey. So please contact me if you're interested in consultations. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.